Hey everybody, it's Thursday evening and we gone live. Tonight we are actually going to be talking to Brett Field, and this is a new series that I'm going to start to feature out on my channel. We're going to talk about the rise of the new media influencer. And we're going to, tonight, our topic is the future of influencer marketing. I've invited Brett back to have this conversation. And for those of you who don't know who Brett is a business influencer in his own right. He is passionate about being a role model and thought leader. And he is especially passionate about supporting and inspiring entrepreneurs and influencers alike. And also he's passionate about disrupting the marketing industry and sharing his knowledge, his logic and opinions on how we can sustain, grow, and use this type of marketing for brand campaigning. So a warm welcome to you, Brett. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Thanks, Lucille.
Okay. Well, we set out a couple of questions for you to actually address. And if you are an influencer out in the market, if you are an entrepreneur and you kind of are starting up in your business, this is the perfect time for you to start to tune in. If you would like to ask any questions, please go ahead and do that below in the comment section. You can address any questions that you want to towards Brett. We're always ready to answer all of your questions. And other than that, grab a pen, grab a paper, and start to take down some notes. So Brett, let's hop on right into it because we also have limited time. I'm going to pose the very first question to you, and this is quite a topical one, is what are the benefits of influencer marketing?
I think primarily the biggest benefit is that you can speak to very niche audiences and you can talk to them through somebody that they trust. So rather than us trying to predict what our audiences want and need, we now have a channel through the influencer who will actually give us insight before we design our campaigns as to how we can best position and speak to an audience. And we can do this multiple times through multiple influencers. So single product or single service.
Just expand on that a little bit. In what way do you mean that we could actually do that? Just explain and expand on that.
So let's do it by way of example. Let's say we sell coffee, right? Now, coffee, we could go to a coffee influencer, so somebody who is running a channel that talks very much about coffee. They've got all the people who want to know everything there is about coffee, and we can speak to that audience. That audience will have a very wide demographic and psychographic within it. At the same time, we might go to a lifestyle influencer who has a interest in coffee and often talks about coffee, and they're going to be speaking to their market that might be a more narrow demographic and psychographic. It might be more female, younger, and we're going to then position coffee more differently. It might be that it's somebody talking about the coffee culture in Cape Town, and then we're going to position our campaign around how to make a cortado at home, whereas if we're speaking to business people in Sandton, we might be talking roasted beans or cappuccinos or so because we've got multiple people that we can speak to, we can sell the same product multiple ways.
So it's almost like sub-niching in actual fact, because you're not going to say, and you're not going to approach a younger demographic with the same kind of copy or the same kind of advertising as you would an older demographic who's perhaps a business person at work in the office. So that's quite relevant in today's marketing, because, you know, back in the day, especially when we're talking about traditional marketing, it was kind of one message that reached everybody's ears, whether you were young, whether you were old. We never really targeted and actually dissected marketing in that manner and way. So it is quite relevant going forward. I love the way that you're thinking with that.
So what we've got there is so when we moved to digital and social, that started to open up to marketers. We started to get Business Manager on Facebook and those sorts of tools that gave us insights and the ability to cut up our target markets into more and more narrow fields. What's now happening is we're going a step further, where we're now going through, we're getting to those niches, but we're going through a person of trust. Okay. And not only just a person of trust, a person who commands an audience and understands their audience beyond what any tool would ever be able to do.
Yes, yes, I agree. And especially with the luxury of digital, not only can you pull stats and demographic, but you can actually pinpoint exactly where they stay, where the conditions in what they stay as well. So I think that's so relevant especially for influencer marketing. Yes.
And our jargon will be on point because we're channeling our message through somebody else. Our cultural sensitivities, if done correctly, aren't going to land us in trouble because we've done it correctly through the right influencers who know that audience. They know what's going to resonate or not or offend. And the more we work through influencers, even if they're not our distribution channel, the more we work through influencers, the more these sort of marketing mistakes that we've seen in an ever easily offended world are not going to happen.
Oh, this is so true. And it is so relevant for today, and how we were even chatting before we met out online, how different groups and age groups are actually consuming this monster we call the internet, and how they actually are engaging at a level that we never even thought possible when I was growing up, that's for sure. All right, let's just get to our comments here. I just want to say a howdy to Phil. Thanks for stopping past. Thanks for being a part of our audience. And I hope you're enjoying all of the comments. And keep watching. All right, so let's go back to another question when it comes to influencer marketing. And I want to just ask you, is influencer marketing, do you believe that influencer marketing is the future of social selling? Because now we kind of touched on this point. Let's delve deeper into this now, Brett.
So it's the current future. And the thing about the future is the future keeps getting pushed out, right? So to say it's certainly not the infinite future, but it certainly is. Right now, it's in its infancy, and it's going to continue to gain traction. So more and more, it's going to not just be marketing, but selling. And marketers are starting to understand that the influencer is more than somebody who got a lot of attention on social.
Yeah.
And now that they're starting to realize that, they're starting to use that more. And because they're using it more, the platforms have started to take notice. The big move in Facebook at the moment is building the platform that will manage influencers. Now, if they're building their next big platform on the back end around influencers, it's an absolute guarantee that is the future of social selling. And I think what we're going to see is the ability for influencers to sell directly through their channel. So if I'm running a campaign for viral coffee, if I'm as the influencer, I will be able to have the product in a shot with the little dot, the sales dot on it, click it, buy it, consume it. The attribution is immediately linked to me because the platform's telling the brand, Brett sold 17 kgs of coffee this week, and it will manage the payment so that the influencers don't get cut out. So it will manage all of that. It'll give the brand their cut. It'll give me my cut, and it will take a cut for itself, no doubt.
Yeah, and that's also another beauty of using automation, because all this stuff is actually set up from the get-go. Even the algorithms that read the data, they set up from the get-go. So I also believe when it comes to social selling, I do believe that this is the next step of evolution when it comes to advertising and marketing. This is how exactly we're going to be to start looking at things. I
think one of the big things that I think a lot of people haven't looked at yet is, we only look at this in terms of e-commerce, and we've seen a huge trend towards the omni-channel experience, and there's not an e-retailer that I know of, certainly in South Africa, and I would say we're probably behind this trend, in that's not seriously considering or currently putting in place an omni-channel experience. And where influencers will be used there is not just on the digital side, but they'll be used to attract people in store. So it will be in-store demos, and even that started. I've seen that being done in South Africa, and more. I can't remember her name. It's off the top of my head, but one of the South African TikTok influencers just about took Fourways Mall to a standstill about a month or so ago. I've seen HP working with the likes of Nadia Jafta, where they're bringing people to a physical location. So to think of the influencer purely as a social or digital tool that marketers can use is missing the opportunity to actually bring them into the physical world to attract consumers.
Jeepers, that's amazing. And talking about that actually reminded me of the very first visual robot that was placed in, I think it was Woolworths stores, where you could actually walk up to it and it would dress you and recommend what you should wear. Tell us a little bit about the Fourways incident. Just expand on that, Brett. I haven't heard about that.
So I don't know if it was attached to a campaign or anything, but certainly before anybody had taken TikTok seriously, I don't think anybody in South Africa has really taken TikTok seriously, not from a marketing perspective yet. And they'll all be kicking themselves. It's like me telling you to get into Instagram 10 years ago. Now imagine you were putting as much effort into your Instagram now as you are now 10 years ago, and just imagine you were still in there when viral and organic reach was for free. So that's where we are with TikTok now. But basically, one of the South African TikTok girls, young girl, and she went to Fourways Mall. That it had been set up because there was security and whatever in place, and literally 3 floors up, atrium absolutely packed with people. And I think that was the first time I saw some of the marketers that I was speaking to. They noticed that because they saw the immediate power of a new platform that they had disregarded or not yet regarded. I don't even think they had gotten to the point where they had regarded it enough to disregard it. And they saw now the power of it to mobilize people. This wasn't just a few onlookers. This was en masse people in there. There we go.
There we go.
Thanks, Darren.
That was Shanae Kobler. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think for me, she was one of the first to actually show the power of the platform outside of the platform to get people to physically mobilize.
Yeah. So that is the power of social selling, especially with an influencer under your belt. I mean, that's you can't actually equivalent that to money terms at the end of the day, because I mean, that's just right on the mark with regards to sales and people walking in the door. I love that story. Thanks for sharing that with us. All right, let's just acknowledge a couple of our people that are hanging out with us. Thank you so much for joining us. Terence, howdy, thanks for joining us. I hope you're enjoying. Please ask any questions if you want to down below in the comment section. We're ready to answer. And there's another person, Tammy Buerta. Hi there, thanks for joining us this evening. I hope that you're finding this of much interest and it's certainly helping you. And Tammy also said that would be stunning. I think she was referring to what we were talking about right at the beginning when we were opening up about social influencer stunning. Thank you so much, everybody, for all of your comments. It really makes a difference when you're here hanging out live. All right, so let's head on to the next question then, Brett. And this is, why is influencer marketing growing faster than digital ads? Your opinion?
Because it's better. I truly believe that it's better. And the reason is because it's not just being put out there hoping that somebody's clicking in. The digital ads, we're putting it up, and we're putting it up in a place where we know a certain demographic goes there because we know the stats and insights of the website that it's hosted on. But influencer marketing it's the difference between your friend telling you this is really great, I think this is really great, and then me thinking, oh well then I think I want that product too, versus seeing a billboard or even a poster up in a shop, right? And then the other big factor that I don't think has quite hit this market enough to have had its full impact, but it's certainly going to happen, and that's ad blockers. Ad blockers are coming standard in a lot of the new browsers and digital experiences, and sooner or later it's going to block the majority of them. And the other really, really, really big problem is bots. I've seen audits where 90% of the clicks on digital ads were bots. So more and more marketers are saying to their agencies, I want an audit done. And when you do those audits, it's shocking. And, when there's an influencer, they're speaking to these people. They've got that audience. And it's not to say that there's no fakes and fake followers and those sorts of things, but typically that's been cleaned up quite quickly, right? If we look at Instagram even, it's still a young platform relative to the likes of a Google. So while Google's still battling with 60, 70, 80, 90+% bots, Instagram, you've got guys who have inflated their audience in order to try and seem more attractive to potential brand collaborations or influencer campaigns. But it's backfiring on them. And a lot of them are actually now auditing themselves. You can go and get a list of which accounts seem like they are what they call mass followers. So it's an account that just seems to mass follow and typically is attached to a click farm of some sort. And then they're auditing themselves, and because they now know that it's not just their following. They have to have a decent following, but more in terms of its quality, less in terms of its quantity. And now it's a race to have the biggest and best.
Yeah, it comes back to the know, like, and trust factor. It's something that I've always spoken about myself, especially in my digital classes, is that in any campaign that you're marketing, if you don't have those three elements within the campaign, 9 times out of 10, you will not actually quantify it, it will not convert. And it also brings me back, as we're talking about, to paid campaigns versus the influencer campaign. And so many, again, it becomes almost that traditional sense where they are paying for Google ads or ad space paid on social or whatever, but they're not making budgets. And most of these brands don't make budget for influencer marketing. So there has to be this flip that happens. And now that more and more people are starting to audit all of their clickbacks and click-throughs and whatnot when it comes to paid ads, it's becoming more and more evident that influencer marketing is a better option. You get more in your back, and it can actually quantify itself into sales made. So I think it's very relevant.
And it also, it's really great for brand salience. People always look at influencer marketing purely from a sales perspective. And I think, there's already another evolution that's just waiting to happen. And that's brand building through influencers, where you're saying to the influencers, there is no strategy to sell. We're not trying to place a product and get it sold. All we're doing is we're building our brand through high quality, highly professional influencers.
Yeah, and it makes sense. And again, influencers who care about their loyal fans, they're the ones that are bringing in the quality people. They're the ones that bringing in the followers that know, like, and trust them, and therefore are quantifying those sales as well. So it's all relevant.
And then on the brand side, right now, it's the cheapest influencer marketing is ever going to be. Yes. In the same way as I'm saying, get onto TikTok now, I'm saying get onto influencer marketing right now. Yeah. If you get in now, it's the cheapest it's ever going to be. As more and more brands see it converting on both sales and salience, they're going to realize that they've got to start putting budget towards it. And then the high quality, highly professional influencers, their demand is going to skyrocket, and they are not going to work with a lot of the brands. They're going to refuse to work with a lot of them. They'll demand a really high fee, which they can justify. And there's going to be a point where people are fighting to get a slot or an opportunity with the influencer. Rather, this whole market's going to flip around, guaranteed.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, because now I'm quite intrigued. Let's talk about the US market influencer compared to the Africa. Let's look at the continents as the Africa influencer. What is the difference? Let's look at compare the difference there, Brett.
So I think typically the US market, the guys will have a lot larger audiences. And I think that's a couple of reasons. I think one, they've got a population, I don't know what it is, something like 8 or 10 times the South African population. So it makes sense. They also have a more highly digitized economy and digitized population. So there's more users within their territory. So they're going to have higher, higher numbers and audiences. And I think that a lot of brands there's also more companies. So there's more brands looking and testing and playing around. But I think proportionately, South Africa is probably not too much behind. The whole world's behind on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it is something that is going to kind of spearhead in marketing. I still believe that, I mean, like you said, we're still in kind of infant stage. We haven't even got to the crawling stage when it comes to marketing.
And what's interesting is that because people can upskill themselves from a young age and they can get influence from a young age, what's happening is we're battling, it's a battle of the ego often within a marketing department or an agency where they don't want to legitimize the effort and the relevance of the influencer just yet because the whole market's changed. So these people are able to upskill. They don't have to necessarily go through film school before they can start becoming a filmmaker. They can do that when they're 16, 15, 14, 11. They start learning all this. They're confident on a mic by the time they're 9 because they've been speaking and doing live feeds from a young age. So this didn't exist before. So it's very hard to try and relate it back. And then, as a marketer who's whatever in their 40s, 50s, they battle to understand that this is a new media and that now the spokespeople is not 1 or 2 and celebrity status or inside big traditional media houses, that the spokespeople to niche markets now exists, and sometimes that's a 16-year-old girl.
Yeah.
And they need to get over that or miss out on it.
Yeah. And also, that's what I find in agencies. That's why I kind of hit my head against the wall every time is, when you're sitting talking to an agency head, he is in his, let's say, mature years, and he's come through traditional himself. And now this new thing is digital, and kind of he's only focused on the digital aspect of it. It's not actually broadening his horizons when it comes to influencer marketing. So again, when they approach this, it almost becomes like a little slam dunk, like, okay, well, we'll get a couple of influencers involved. Let's just give them product for exposure exchange, and yeah, let's have a couple of them without actually planning that strategy. So and I see a lot falls down then, yeah.
At the same time, I also get it from the agency's perspective. It was built on traditional media. It's very hard to pivot out of that into something where, agencies, a lot of their money is made inside production, because production used to be really hard to do at a level that is acceptable. Two things have happened. One is the ability to do production at a quality level has become infinitely easier. And that's put it into the hands of influencers who can now make this for their niche. The second thing is the quality required has come down, right? I can shoot 4K 120 frames a second on an iPhone, right? And I don't need 4K because most people are consuming it at HD. So I don't even need the quality that sits in my hand as an influencer outside. But if I used to, in the old structures and in agencies, even just 10 years ago, that was hiring a studio, film crew, focus pull, runners,
directors, producers. And
they were required. So and now all of a sudden that part's almost been stripped out. If you really take this influencer marketing and you start to run a lot of your production. Now, I'm not saying that you should go and say, as an agency, go, right, okay, we're going to hand over the TVC to an influencer. I'm not saying you shouldn't either, but there's different brands and they've got different requirements. But I guess my point is that there is not necessarily just this inability to, it's not just that agencies don't want to work with influencers. A lot of it comes down to them not quite knowing how to pivot the business, which is going to be difficult.
Yeah.
And then their next problem is convincing the brand that they represent or that they're working with that it's a good idea. Because if we're talking about a senior agency creative director or whoever strategist that you were talking about, he's then going to a board of directors of a top 40 listed company where everybody's still wearing a gray suit to board meetings, and he's trying to convince that group of people that they should spend their money with a 16-year-old girl who commands an audience. So they've got a very tough job in terms of consumer education back to brands.
Yeah. So it's actually dual. It's both ways. And we've got to approach it in that manner as well, as we not only have to educate the rising influencer, but to also educate those agencies as well as brands, and highlighting the benefits of using a 16-year-old as your influencer. Yes, I mean, I think this is all very relevant because we have to educate them. We have to also get them on board because they ultimately are signing that paycheck.
And I think one of the things that's going to help this along is that one of the evolutions of influencers within influencer marketing is that the cliched 16-year-old girl is no longer all that an influencer is. That's become this sort of cliche that needs to start to disappear, and that's why I want to address it rather than having used it. I want to now address it in that there's influencers at a very wide spectrum of demographic and psychographic. There are people in their 80s that are running successful influencer marketing campaigns. And I think one of the things that's going to help with consumer education is when people see themselves in the same way that influence is done with people that we know and that we can relate with. The same is going to happen when you've got a board of directors that are in their, say, 70s, and then one of the influencers is also in their 70s. They can immediately just start to relate And I think that's one of the things that will help it, is as it matures up the line and up the demographic, so will it help exponentially with consumer education within the brands.
That's actually a very, very clever way of approaching it. A good idea as well to actually initiate. Yes, because it becomes that relating point, and people convert at that point of relation, and it's that know, like, and trust coming into factor there as well. Very, very insightful. Thanks, Brett. All right, let's move on to the next question, which is, what will be the future of influencer marketing?
So I think it will evolve very much in terms of attribution. I think being able to attribute a sale or even brand salience to an influencer will become increasingly easy to do. I think the platforms are going to make that easy, and they're also going to make it easier to try. You know, it used to be hard to run an ad on Facebook. Now you can boost a post, right? Which is not necessarily the best way, but you know, if you've got no budget for a strategist and any of that, you put a couple of bucks behind, and you got an ad running that you didn't have before you finished your cup of coffee. So influencer marketing campaigns are going to help match brands with influencers. So more and more the platform will help to link those two and to make it easier for these campaigns to run. And then I think the most exciting part for me right now, and I haven't seen it happen yet, but I guarantee you it's going to happen, and that's the physicality of influencer campaigns in collaboration with brands on the product side. So I'm not, and that's where I say a influencer will work with the brand to create a product. Now, I'm not talking about the Cristiano Ronaldo signature series Adidas shoes or whatever it is. So it's not just slapping his signature onto something. I'm talking where the brand and the influencer work together to create a unique product that is 100% unique, and where the influencer will start to take a shareholding or profit share for a specific product that they've worked with to develop for their audience. Sure, and that will get very exciting. Very exciting.
That is. You know, it almost, as you're talking about it, my hair is standing up on the back of my neck. So it's almost like you're saying that the influencer then has that influence again in creating a brand new product that is inspired by the all of the metrics, the analytics, they're following what they want from the audience, and creating a product that is totally and specifically for their audience and their followers.
So they become the R&D department.
Sure.
And I think my guess is it's going to happen in sneakers first. That would be my guess. Just because sneaker culture, coming from a person who's typically barefoot, maybe I'm not the best to speak about this, but certainly my observations is that sneaker culture is very much around customization. And a big thing that's happening on a lot of the channels at the moment is where people customize shoes on behalf of somebody else. And it's a matter of time before Puma or Adidas, it would be one of those two, in my opinion. I think they'll be the first to do it, where the sole of the shoe or the imprint or how it's laced up. And I'm saying not just it gets changed to look unique. I'm saying a fundamental change where people are going to have to change the production line to that extent of customization. Is where I think that influencer marketing is going.
Sure, that's huge. Again, bringing in the value of your follower because they have that influence. So talking in production line is almost like if they don't want these produced over in China in the kind of way that it is produced, that they actually want perhaps to be produced in America or back home or in their region, that they will have that influence to actually influence that. Wow, that's huge. That's huge. Jeepers. That is the future. I can see this happening. I can absolutely see this happening. Wow. Jeepers.
And I think it's going to happen on a big scale before it happens on a small scale. Unless there's people listening now and they hop onto it first. But I think it's going to be the likes of an Adidas or a Puma or a Calvin Klein or one of those brands. Oddly enough, the likes of Gucci seems to be quite popular with the YouTubers, so they might look to do something. Red Bull is always an interesting player in this space, but they typically they would build an infrastructure or a theme around somebody like they did with Ninja. But it might be a coffee roastery who creates a flavor that is only available through this influencer who was there for the R&D and the tasting and whatever, and the packaging, and that influencer might have chosen somebody out of their audience to be the person who helped them brand it or do the packaging. There's going to be something, and then they would have 50 different lines. But if you want to buy the viral coffee, you have to buy it from Brett. And if you want to buy the green coffee, you got to buy it through Lucille. Like that's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
It is going to be. Okay, we've got a comment here, and Darren is also kind of agreeing with us. He says, have a look at Cole Bennett, who started and run Lyrics Lemonade. He just launched his collaboration with Nike, which, okay, thanks, Darren. Thanks for the heads up. I'll also go and have a look at that because we're also wanting to feature some case studies. Have you seen this one at all, Brett?
I haven't seen this one. And I'm very interested to go and have a look and see how far the collaboration went. I have seen a number of collaborations, and it's the first evolution of this. It's what's then going to, unless the example that Darren's brought up has already done it and I've missed it, which is very, very possible, but it's when they start to morph the product itself, as opposed to customize through collaboration. So I'm really hoping I've missed this one and it's already there.
Well, we'll both go and have a look because this is something that is quite topical, and again, it's what the future is going to start to bring. And the more we look to the future, especially in the marketing field, the better off you'll be. Especially if you are a brand, even an agency, if you are in the marketing world, these are things that are happening, and they're happening a lot faster than they ever before. And it's always a good idea to be on top of this. All right, so Darren has just popped in something else. Let's just see what he says. He says another good one is Peter McKinnon, who did an exclusive coffee run along with his own signature run of Canadian coins and his own camera bag line along with camera ND filters from inception to creation. Awesome, Darren. Thanks for sharing that with us again. We need to go and have a look-see at that. But again,
so that one I've seen, and Peter McKinnon's actually a great example. Thanks, Darren. He's a photographer and really, really runs a phenomenal YouTube channel. Definitely worth looking out for. And he's done some really cool collabs and was one of the fastest growing accounts ever, if I'm not mistaken, on I think he might have been the fastest to 1 million or one of the fastest to 1 million subs. And he's certainly pushing that boundary. So great example.
That's amazing. So there are people that we can actually go and see. And if this is happening now, and this is kind of small scale still, I mean, can you imagine what the future does hold for influence marketing? It's awesome. I am really excited. Okay, let's hop on into the next question. How has social media changed influencer marketing? So this is something now that we're already talking about.
I think what social media did is it made influencer marketing as we know it today possible. Before, we've always had influencer marketing, That's what we forget. But it used to be celebrity endorsement. That's where this came from.
Yes.
Right? Because I'm a great footballer, I've got influence within my category. If I'm the best footballer on the planet, now I've got in my own myself, the player, command an even bigger influence. If I'm a movie star or a famous painter or something, that's how I commanded my audience, is that I rose to the top of something that was existing. What social media has allowed is that if I am the best potter in the southern suburbs of Cape Town, I can be an influencer to that niche. I don't have to be the best in the world. I don't have to compete. I don't even have to really stand out too much. I don't have to use other channels. I can just hop on to do my thing. And if I'm authentic and I start to get traction and I go, well, hang on, I've got a really great audience. I mean, there's a guy on TikTok who takes watermelons and he stretches elastic bands around them until they explode. That's all the guy does, and he's got I think he's got something like 2 million followers, right? Now, the likes of that, my point more there is around, if you now sell watermelons or elastic bands, you've got somebody that you can go to, right? The account obviously gets, the novelty wears off really quickly, and this guy knows that he might never actually ever make any money of it. It's a silly example to point out that you don't have to be a top footballer in the top league. 20 years ago, if you were in club football, you weren't even an influencer. You had to be in like Premier League or Champions League. I'm not a sports guy, but you had to be right at the top. It's like Formula One. You knew who podiumed. You certainly didn't know whatever the class is, Formula 2. You didn't know a single person in there. Whereas now, all the way down to go-kart riding has influence to a varied size of audience. And that's because of social. Without that, those people can't connect to create the audience that they influence.
Yeah. So here again, I can bring in some example, and I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs, and when I first started actually sharing knowledge and training, I must admit that a lot of them they couldn't believe as soon as they hit the campaign button, the comeback that happened almost instantly. So I think, yes, it's very relevant. And it is exactly what's happening right now. So social media has actually extended it and amplified this, whether you are an entrepreneur or just a marketeer or even just an influencer in this field. So it's very relevant. Okay, Brett. Well, we've come to 45 minutes already. We've gone through all of the comments. Thank you to everybody that hung out tonight. We're going to keep it short and sweet. Brett, any last comments that you would like to leave behind before we sign off?
I think that my sort of final comment has to be that the quicker you take it on as either wanting to be an influencer and be part of that side of the market, whether it is you've got an agency or you're in an agency to push why this is important and why you're getting in early and why that is important and why you stand to benefit. And if you're a brand, to start taking this stuff seriously, because you stand to gain. And I think wherever you are in that triangle of influencer marketing, you all stand to win now. And as it matures, that opportunity is going to just become more expensive and smaller. So it's up to you. It's up to everybody to decide when they want to jump on. but the earlier, the better.
Yeah, that's so true. All right. Thank you so much for everybody. Thanks, Brett. Thanks again for being my guest on tonight's show. You'll catch us next week, Thursday. I'll post up the next event tomorrow, so look out for that. If you are an influencer, if you're an agency, if you're a marketing professional, even if you're an entrepreneur, these are the types of hangouts that you should be attending. They're punched and full with information, insights, and knowledge from my guest speaker, Brett Field. You can go and follow him out online at I am Brett Field. And yes, tune in next week. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good evening. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.